Well, good mountain morning to you. I wanted to come out here on the range today and hang out and just sort of discuss some of the differences between single action, double action, single action, and striker fire pistols. Coming up on Modern Mountain Man. Alright, so I know for quite a few of my viewers, some of the information I'm going to talk about today is old hat. You guys have been shooting pistols for a long time, and I encourage you guys to just stay tuned just in case there is something you might learn. Also, this might be a helpful resource for you to explain things to somebody else in the future. But for the rest of us, I want to just dive in and talk about some of the basics between single action, double action, and striker fire. Yeah, I've typically been more of a double action, single action shooter, but I've committed to pressing myself a little bit harder on striker fire and a little bit harder on single action, such as the 1911, 2011 platform, just to make sure I'm not completely biased, to make sure I've made proper decisions, all that kind of stuff, so I can be swayed, y'all. I just want to jump in real quick and just talk about some of the differences. So when you're talking about single action versus double action, you're talking about when you actuate the trigger, the effect it has on a hammer, the hammer having its effect on the firing pin, all that kind of stuff. So we're talking about a single action. The vast majority of single action semi-automatic pistols, you're referring to something of the 1911 family of pistols. Now I do realize I'm going to make some large generalizations because we're talking about the three main types of actions. There are other actions other than the three that I've listed. These are the three main types of actions, and if everything I said about the single action was true for all single actions, there would only be one type of single action. Same double action, single action, same for the striker fire. But the truth is there's a variety of gun makers with a variety of models, so some of the things I'll say are vast generalizations, but generally hold true. And one of those is the majority of single actions are of the 1911 family. I realize there are some CZs out there that are single action only. Some of the SIG P220s are single action only. There's other single action onlys, but the vast majority of single actions alive on the earth today are from the year 1911. Of course, there's the 2011 that is the double stack version of the 1911. But when you talk about something that is single action, let me show you real quick. All right, so see the hammer is down right now. And if I were to pull the trigger, nothing is going to happen because it is a single action, and that action does not involve the action of bringing the hammer back. And so with a single action, you keep it in what they call a cocked and locked state, to where safety is on. I'll show you the side where the safety is. Safety is on, and then when you disengage the safety. Now in the case of a 1911, you've also got this safety here as well, the grip safety. You have to get in here, and then when you pull the trigger, all the trigger is doing is one single action, releasing the hammer. Now, I'll show it to you again one more time. Get in here, get your hand up in the grip, so you got the grip safety actuated. Get your finger here on the trigger, bang. Real nice, light, crisp trigger pull there. Now, this was one of the very first of the semi-automatics, and so once again, it was just some basic fundamentals that pretty much the majority of semi-automatic pistols share its lineage. It's somewhere here in the 1911. We'll talk real quick some advantages, disadvantages of single action. The primary advantage of single action really is that short, little, crisp trigger pull there. This trigger design is over 100 years old, and it is shocking that we haven't come up with something that most people would agree with is a better trigger. There are other complaints people have about this model, but generally speaking, the trigger is not one of the complaints that people have. So what happens in a single action, once again, you fire, it drops the hammer, but the recoil of the gun brings this back, and all of a sudden the hammer's back again, and you shoot again. You keep doing that till you run out of your 8 little rounds, or 8 fat rounds you have here with your 45. So once again, the advantage to a single action trigger is that light crisp. The disadvantage is, once again, hammers down, nothing. Once again, you can spend all day long on the internet, and you'll find people with their praise and their complaints of the 1911 and other single action only pistols. But once again, you're not going to hear anybody complain about the triggers on them. And by and large, yeah, some people complain about anything. You know, and they're generally regarded as a very you know, fast gun. You know, in terms of just that action, so quick to fire, then reset it so quick. And so a lot of you guys that are running competition race guns are running some variation of this. Once again, a broad generalization I'm making here. But yeah, single action, you know, like I said, it basically means that it functions one action. That trigger can only do one thing. I'm gonna grab my double action single action. This is an IWI Jericho 941 PSL. Really long name, but basically this is sort of the IWI knockoff of a CZ75. This one is a single action, double action. So by double action, it can. So if I pull the trigger, it can do one action as it, see the hammer coming back right there, and then the second action is it drops the hammer. So you can do that, or it can be just like the 1911, be backed in a cocked and locked position. I'll show you this side over here where the safety is, and it can be here cocked and locked. Hit that down, real light trigger pull. Now this one, some of the advantages of a double action, single action is, for some people, that long pull on the first shot before, once again, the recoil brings it back and the next one is short. In a self-defense situation, sometimes it's a good thing to have a nice long trigger pull, because if you're holding somebody at bay for a long period of time, you don't necessarily want a hair trigger where you may negligently discharge your firearm. Another advantage is for those of you who are doing appendix carry, when you're shoving that thing down where the family jewels are, if you are going with the safety off, which a lot of people run safety off, if you're going with safety off, the thing is, you can actually put your thumb here on the hammer as you're inserting it down into the holster, and if you were to catch something on this trigger and it would start to actuate the trigger, your thumb would feel the hammer coming back, and you could back up. Whoa, something's not good here. And so that's one of the advantages to it. Once again, another advantage is I can run it just like a 1911 where it's cocked and locked, and I start off with that nice light trigger pull. These ones, like I said, a disadvantage to a double action, single action is it takes a little bit more training to get used to two separate trigger pulls, where my first shot's long and hard, and then my second shot is just a little one. And it's a completely different take-up, completely different pull, completely different poundage as far as the pull. And so it takes a little bit more training to get used to that. Now for your striker fire, now remember how I showed you how these ones were single action because the pull of the trigger did one action, it drops the hammer, or the double action, it did two actions, retracted the hammer and then dropped the hammer as well. Well, when it comes to a striker fire, you can't necessarily call it a double action or a single action. In fact, if you want it to be really particular, it's a 1.5 action, because generally speaking, now once again speaking in broad generalizations, the striker holds a little the firing pin at half, and so it's half cocked, and then my pull of the trigger pulls it the rest of the way back and then releases it. So do that again for you. See, it's pulling it back, there's tension, all of a sudden it just drops. One of the advantages of a striker fire is it only, unlike the double action, single action one that I showed you a moment ago, it only has one trigger pull to train on. It's one of the reasons why most of your trainers who are training large groups of people prefer the SIG P320s, they prefer the Glocks, they prefer a lot of the striker fire things, because I'm not accusing the trainers of being lazy, but it's just simpler for them to train new shooters how to pull one trigger one way, instead of having to train like the double action, single action, where it's two different trigger pulls on the same trigger. So it's simpler. A disadvantage is, man, when it comes to this little trigger pull, it's just a real mushy little trigger pull. And some people are cool with that, some people are not. It's not nearly as clean as that 1911 I showed you a minute ago. It's not nearly as clean as the single action on the single double action on the Jericho I showed you a moment ago, but it's consistent. That's the big advantage there. So it's the trigger is both an advantage and a disadvantage. It's all a matter of perspective here. Now another disadvantage with some of the striker fires. So this one here, because it's the Army model. This one actually does have a thumb safety on it. A lot of striker fires don't have an actual safety. They're like the Glocks, they have the little dingus thing there that's like a safety on the trigger. But you know, there's a certain amount of worry somebody has when they're putting that one down in their appendix carry, because unlike my double action, single action, I've got no way to tell whether the trigger is being pulled or not. And so it's a little bit more precarious for some people, and that's why there's a lot of people who will veer away from a striker fire or even appendix carry. Like I said, this is a broad generalization today of the difference between a striker fire, double action, single action, and a single action only pistol. There's a large variety of different manufacturers, different designs within manufacturers. So some of the things I said may be true for a lot of double action, single actions. They may be true for a lot of striker fires, and may be true for a lot of 1911 or single action only type handguns, but it might not be true for all of them. So take some of that with a grain of salt, but there were some generalizations that are true across the board. Now the question is, all right, Modern Mountain Man, which one is better? Which one is better? And that is a question that I can't answer. It's a question you have to answer. I have a preference of one of those on the table. You may have a preference of one of those on the table. But what I would challenge you is to challenge your preferences. Like I said, I have a bias towards the double action, single action. However, I'm challenging my bias by shooting, borrowing, trying out the striker fires, trying out more of the single action only. I'm currently in a pistol buying decision right now on my next handgun, and honestly, I've got several different styles of handguns that I'm looking at right now. It's not just like one category with a couple different varieties within the category. I'm looking at 3 different categories, and I don't know what I'm going to buy yet. So I'm going to spend some more time on the range, and I hope this video was informative, and my experience today after I shut this camera off is going to be more informative to my decision. God bless you. Go take your mountain.